The man you see there on the right is Clark Barrington, BYU offensive lineman. We'll be talking about the Oregon loss, looking ahead to the game against Wyoming this weekend. It's all ahead on the Clark Barrington Show.
You are Locked On Cougars, your daily podcast on the BYU Cougars, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everybody? I'm Jake Hatch, your host here on Locked On Cougars, your resident BYU insider. Thank you for making us here on Locked On Cougars, your first listen of the day. Very excited to catch up with Clark Barrington for his weekly appearance here on the show. Just a quick reminder for you guys, we are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where, of course, the motto is your team every day. And as such, this is your only daily podcast focused on the BYU Cougars. But more importantly, Clark, how are you today, my friend?
Doing well.
That's what we like to hear. Let's start here. The Oregon loss obviously has got, I think, the people in the program, fans, media alike, trying to kind of reevaluate where things are at right now for this team, especially a week after you go and beat Baylor in the way you did and then suffer the loss that you did at Oregon. Kind of give me your sense from the inside of that loss against Oregon.
Yeah, for sure. Kind of the word you used there was a reevaluation of everything. And so I think that's exactly, kind of the process we're going through. Whether it's a win or a loss, there's always things to learn from, but, even more so when you do lose. And so we're just kind of going back, looking at things and of course there's a lot of things that we could have done better. And so hopefully this next week we learn from what we did bad this last week and we improve upon it and build from there. So
let me ask you this. Obviously, you talk about reevaluation. Obviously, with the season the way it is, you guys have only a certain amount of time that you really can reflect on a game like Oregon, and then you've obviously got to turn your attention to Wyoming. So
right.
Help me understand how much you guys really can digest of like rewatching the tape from Oregon before you have to kind of force yourself and say, you know what, that's in the past. We've got to look forward now to Wyoming.
Yeah, for sure. A lot of the personal kind of film study comes into play there. And, I think almost everybody watches the game over again on the flight back and you see it for the first time over again right there. And you learn things from that. And then you usually watch it again on Sunday or whatever it may be. And then when we come in on Monday, that's something we watch again, the most important clips of the game we watch then. And then, halfway through meetings, we usually move on to Wyoming. So it's a pretty quick turnaround, but you see it enough times to know what you've done wrong and what you need to fix. So
not to make light of the point, but you talk about the fact you watch it on the plane back, you watch it on Sunday, and then you come in on Monday. I'm sure Coach Funk has got it all queued up and showing you the stuff you need to improve on. But I would guess, considering you've watched it and as you said twice already, you probably already have an idea of, I guess I'm assuming, plays that he's gonna be like, Clark, X, Y, and Z. Here's where you should.
Yeah, for sure. You know what you're gonna get coached up on pretty much before you go in there. So
it's one of those fun things. I'm sure at the same time you're kind of like sliding down your desk. Please don't call me. Please don't call me.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Obviously, there's a lot of talk about the issues with the run game, and you're part of the offensive line. I know we talked about this last week, and you said that, hey, we're doing our best to improve this. Talking with Coach Satake during his press conference, he pointed to the fact that he felt like the entire team had issues with execution, focus, discipline in this game against Oregon. But when it comes to the run game, tell me where you think the biggest issues are at this moment.
Yeah, honestly, I just think we need to get that mindset back that, we will be the most physical line on the field. And so if we get that mindset back, that execution and intensity will come as well. And so I think it's really just a mindset thing.
So is it just kind of channeling like, hey, this I know how I'm supposed to play. I just, like, for you personally, you got to kind of channel that once again. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, for sure. Exactly.
Very cool. All right, I got one more question on the Oregon front, and then we'll talk some Wyoming, et cetera, as we move along here. But I wanted to ask you, when you guys are under it the way you were against Oregon, and they raced out to a big lead, obviously, and then in that circumstance, running the football becomes secondary. You've got to throw the football to get hopefully back into that game. I thought
Right.
the pass pro was very, very good in this game, but when it comes to being so far down so quickly, how difficult is that as a player to stay engaged and to be like, you know what? We're still in this, but at the same time, understanding that, hey, at some point it's going to get out of hand.
Yeah. It's kind of an interesting situation. But you kind of just have to almost forget about, all of the negatives and think about the next play and do your best that play. And hopefully that will amount to bringing you back into the game. And that's kind of the mindset you have to go out there on the field with. So
What was the, I guess, okay, I don't want to belabor the point. I got one more thing. What was the message from the coaches today, though, as they kind of, as you, like you said, you guys have watched the film against Oregon, said halfway through those meetings, you kind of shift your attention to Wyoming. What was the messages from Coach Funk, Coach Roderick, Coach Satake, et cetera, today?
it was just kind of, we all know, we all understand, that we didn't play our best, and that was in all phases of the ball, defense, offense, special teams, whatever it may be. And so it's just, owning up to the fact that we didn't play very well and learning from it and moving on. And so that's kind of the vibe, I guess, throughout the team. So.
All right. We'll talk a little bit about Wyoming here in just a moment. I want to get kind of your thoughts looking ahead to the next home game for BYU. We'll get to that in just a moment. First off, let's talk about our friends over at Upside. From cringing at the pump right now to getting an eye-popping check at your favorite restaurant, inflation is hitting all of us where it hurts. And trust me, folks, it hurts bad. That's why all of us need to start using Upside. I would encourage you to check it out. It's an incredible app for anybody who buys gas, groceries, or dines out. With every purchase, I and you can earn cash back thanks to Upside. To get started, all you got to do is download the free Upside app, use the promo code LOCKED, that's LOCKED, and get $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. Next, claim an offer from whatever you're buying on Upside, check in at that business, pay as usual with your credit or debit card, and get paid. In comparison to credit card rewards or loyalty programs, you can earn up to 3 times more cash back with Upside. That's why Upside has a 4.8-star rating on the App Store right now. So once again, download the free Upside app or use the promo code LOCKED to get $5 more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more. That's $5 or more cash back on your first purchase of $10 or more using the promo code LOCKED when you download the Upside app. Thank you once again for making Locked On Cougars your first listen of the day. Always appreciate you guys checking out the show. Continuing on here with Clark Barrington, BYU offensive lineman. And Clark, do you know much about the history of BYU and the Wyoming Cowboys by chance?
Honestly, I don't. No.
I'm sure you're going to hear a lot about this all week. I'm sure from coaches, Kalani Sitake, Coach Roderick, that they all played against Wyoming back in the day. Wyoming and BYU were tied at the hip in the same conference for the better part of, 70, 80 years. And there's I don't want to call it necessarily a rivalry, but there's been some back and forth, let's put it that way, between these two fan bases. And it seems to always be a classic game when these two get together. So give me your sense of what you see from the Cowboys right now as we're early on in the week, but what do you see from Wyoming on tape?
Yeah, they do a lot of good things. And they've been winning games this season for a reason, it's because they're a good team. And so they got some big physical guys up front that aren't afraid to take a hit or lower their shoulder and give you a blow. And so, I think that's kind of what they pride themselves on is, trying to be the most physical and tough team out there on the field. And so we'll have to bring everything we got to this game for sure.
How nice is it to know that, hey, you said it's a pretty physical team. That's why Wyoming's kind of traditional. Their strengths have been as being one of those teams that just comes in and wants to overpower their opponent. But how nice is it knowing that you're coming back home to LaVell Edwards Stadium for the next 2 games?
Yeah, it's always nice to be home. You saw the energy they brought during the Baylor game, and I'm sure they'll continue to bring it throughout the season. And so, whenever we can play at home in front of all the fans, it's always a good time.
Now, when it comes to Wyoming, obviously, as I said, their fan base I don't know how to describe it. They have like this undying disdain, I guess is the easiest way to say it, for BYU. And it's because for years, and they had some very good Wyoming teams back in the day, but for most of my lifetime, it was like the annual kick the crap out of Wyoming. Let's just put it that way. That's kind of how it was back in the WAC, and then obviously during the Mountain West era for BYU football. But their fan base is a very proud fan base, and obviously they'll have plenty to say, those that make the trip to Provo for this matchup. Now, this relates a little bit to what happened. You've probably seen it in the media with regards to Oregon and their student section chanting a pretty derogatory term. Now, I can say this. I've experienced the Wyoming fans saying that in person myself. So I know you're chuckling because this is not the first time you've probably experienced that. Let me start there. Have you heard that before?
Oh, of course. Yeah.
Like, does it really affect you though all that much?
No, honestly. To be honest, I didn't even hear, the chants at Oregon. Everything kind of just becomes white noise, especially when you're playing in the game. So, it's kind of something that's just in the background. You don't hear it a whole lot. So,
and that's kind of what I anticipated you saying, is because, yeah, it's become like this big thing. I've seen national media picking it up, and
right.
They're acting like this is like a new phenomenon. And I'm like, folks, like, okay, Clark, you're younger than I am. There was an old channel called The Mountain. When the Mountain West had their own network, they called it The Mountain. And I can remember this distinctly. Multiple times, BYU playing in Laramie, Wyoming. So if they were on the road playing in Wyoming, and some derogatory terms similar to what was heard or filmed at the Oregon game was coming almost in unison from the entire crowd through the broadcast. You could hear it on the mics. So I don't necessarily know where I'm taking this with you, but it doesn't seem like this is all that new. And like you said, this is not the first time. This is not your first rodeo, I guess, to use the pun, with regards to this. So you say you block it out. You don't really hear it in the moment. But when it comes to dealing with opposing fan bases, that's kind of part of the nature of playing for BYU, I would assume.
Yeah, for sure. Of course you don't love to hear it, but they're going to say whatever they want to say, and you just kind of have to shrug it off and move on. So,
all right. Now I want to talk a little bit about playing at home in front of your home fans, because Autzen, that seemed like an absolute beehive, maybe one of the loudest stadiums. And I wasn't at the game, but just I could hear the noise through the broadcast. I was watching it on TV. Where would you rank that in terms of the loudest venues you've ever played in?
Honestly, it was definitely one of the louder ones. I'd say the loudest for sure was Tennessee.
Okay.
And, honestly, our home stadium gets up there, when our defense is on the field. And so I know they can get loud, and then probably Oregon. So it's right up there for sure.
Now, you mentioned the fact when the defense is on the field at LaVell Edwards Stadium, that's when the crowd's at their loudest. That's what they're supposed to do, obviously. They're trying to do offense. But do you in some ways feel weird when all of a sudden it's like almost like there's 63,000 people in the stands, but you guys get out there on offense, and suddenly it's like figuratively I can hear a pin drop out here?
Yeah, no, I prefer it that way. Okay. Clear communication is key, so it's good to be able to communicate with the other dudes on the lines. Just make sure we're on the same page.
Okay, and that makes sense, because you got to hear Connor. He's got to be able to relay his calls, obviously from the center position. It's got to go out, obviously, right?
Yep, for sure.
Very cool. By the way, when it comes to that, the communication, obviously we see Jaron all the time, and you guys don't huddle a lot. You guys huddle sometimes. It's a tempo thing you guys like to run. And when you guys are standing there, I see you guys kind of turn around and you're waiting for Jaron. He's checking with the sideline. He walks up and he gives you guys, I'm assuming he gives you the call of what your blocking assignment is. And then at that point, is it Connor start relaying calls from that point? Take me through how that goes, if that makes sense.
Yeah, we get the main call from Jaron, and then, based on the front and the structure of the defense, Connor makes his IDs, and then it kind of works its way out from there. Just depending on who's tied into that ID and who's not, and then you make the calls from there. So.
Is he? This is me nerding out from this is more him IDing, like they usually call it the mic. Most people call it the mic bag. Is he IDing essentially the way that the alignment is formed, so you guys know which way is strong side?
Yeah, for sure, pretty much. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, that makes sense. All right. Now, before we get to some fun stuff, I obviously with the Oregon loss, we'll finish up with some getting to know you stuff as we've done in previous editions of this podcast. Last thing for me is, you said coming back home, when it comes to playing LaVell Edwards Stadium, what is your favorite part of playing in Provo? You've been here is this your 5th year in Provo so far?
Yeah.
What's your favorite part about LES? What's your favorite part about playing at home?
Honestly, just the whole fans and all of them cheering us on. It's always a good time. And then just knowing that you have family up in the stands, it's always a good time there too. Usually always using all of the tickets we're given. And so, try to pack that place full with family or close friends. And it's fun to know that they're up in the stands cheering us on and rooting us on and wishing the best for us. So.
How often do you have to turn people away for tickets?
Fairly often.
Hopefully not mom and dad though. And your
no, they got first dibs for sure.
Well, and that makes sense. I've talked with enough players over the years. You guys, it seems like this is just one other kind of aside, but it seems like when you guys have certain games where you guys may go on the road closer to maybe one of your teammates' families and whatnot, it seems like you guys are pretty good about saying, okay, I'm not using my allotment here. You use this. I'll get it on in another game.
Yeah, for sure. Either way, whether you use them or not, so if you don't use your tickets, there's going to be empty seats. And so we try to fill them all with BYU fans as much as we can. So
a little bit of home crowd feel. I understand that.
Exactly.
Okay. By the way, how cool is it? By the way, and I on the broadcast, it was Jason Benetti, I believe, who's doing the play-by-play, and they had Brock Heward also doing analyst work for Fox. And they're saying, well, all these fans traveling from Provo, and I'm just sitting there, I'm like, no, they're probably most of them from Oregon, Washington, like. The vast majority of those folks probably there in Autzen were from the local area. That's the crazy thing about you.
Yeah, it's cool to see the local fans come out and cheer us on. It's always a good time.
All right, we'll finish up with some fun stuff here in just a moment. But Clark, I need to take a minute and talk about our friends over at Intercap Lending for a moment here. A local company based here in Utah. They're helping more families with their mortgage needs than anybody else in the state. And the reason Intercap gets deals done, my friends, that they feature a quick and simple process. And their goal is to create a stress-free home loan process for you, the consumer. Many of us out there have bought homes, are in the process of trying to buy a home, refinancing, all those different things. The best part is Intercap can handle it all, and that's what Steve Carter, Locked On's personal loan officer with Intercap Lending, would love to help you guys out with. He's got a direct line. You can call him anytime with any questions, 385-800-8528. That is 385-800-8528. You will not find a more responsive loan officer, I can promise you that. The best part is Intercap Lending is offering a corporate rate discount to all of our listeners. If you mention Locked On Cougars, you can mention Clark Barrington if you want, or Jay Catchett, but regardless, they'll take care of you guys, get you that discount. So once again, reach out to Steve Carter. His number 385-800-8528. That's Intercap Lending, NMLS number 190465. Intercap Lending is an equal housing lender. All right, before we go on today's edition of the Clark Barrington Show, Clark, last week I threw a couple of listener questions at you, and we'll get a couple of those before we go. But I wanted to ask you about when it comes to, you mentioned the fact playing at home and having your family in the crowd. It seems like in every family there is a family member who is maybe the more, I guess, vocal of the group that seems to point out your flaws, etc. I can attest. My wife, she loves nothing more than to put me in my place because I work in radio, I do media stuff, and I love her for it because she keeps me in my place. So, is there somebody like that in your life? Is it one of your parents? Is it your wife? Who is the person that is the most vocal when it comes to keeping you on track?
I don't know. I feel like they all play a good role in helping me stay on track. I don't know if there's one that's more vocal than the other, but kind of when it comes to football, they kind of just let me do my thing and see how it goes. But in life, parents always give their 2 cents and what they think is best, and then always discussing what's best with my wife and whatever else. But when it comes to football, I think it usually just kind of do what I do.
They yield to your expertise in that realm, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, when it comes to your brother, obviously you're on the same team. You're playing essentially the same position. I know that he's played at right tackle, at the guard spots. He's played it all across that offensive line. But how is it with him in that regard?
Yeah, it's cool. We're able to go back and watch film together and understand, what is supposed to happen, and then kind of discuss, why maybe it didn't work out or what we could do better. So it's always nice to have, someone you can kind of just turn to and discuss, the playbook or the scheme or whatever, because he understands because he's right there with you. So
he speaks the same language, right? I'm
Yep.
sure that's part of it with your parents and your wife. Like you could go off on XYZ call and they'd be like, "You're speaking a foreign language here, sir."
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. So, Clark, when it comes to this week, playing against Wyoming, et cetera, what is going to be, I guess, your what? Okay, here's the thing. I don't think I've ever asked you this. What is your pregame routine? Like, is there something certain or things that you do certain every single game day without fail? Are you superstitious that way?
Not really. I'm not a big music listener. Kind of just keep to myself a little bit and try to think about what I'm gonna do when I get out there and try to picture that. But kind of just channel in all of the energy that's coming, all of the anxiety, all the nervous emotions, whatever it may be, so that I can go out and perform well. So
you talk about channeling that. How do you go about that? Because that can be it's much easier said than done.
Yeah. Honestly, I don't know. I feel like it's something that just kind of happens. I'm always chewing on some gum to, make sure my stomach is settled and the nerves and emotions kind of mess with me a little bit pregame, but as soon as I get out there on the field for the first play, it all kind of goes away. And so just kind of knowing that I've been there before, and I can do whatever that needs to be done, once I'm on the field, kind of just helps me calm down once I'm on there and help me perform. So
it's kind of, I guess, in a way, this is just my perception. It sounds like it's nervous anticipation in the lead up, but once you're out there, it's like, oh yeah, I've done this before. Let's go.
Yeah, for sure. Yep.
Okay, you talk about chewing gum. Here's the thing. I didn't play past the high school level, but I've got a teammate that I played with, and we're still very good friends to this day. Every game day in high school, Clark, he would eat like a Tupperware-sized bowl of white rice. Plain. Maybe if he wanted to mix it up a little bit, he put a little salt on it, but that was it. That was his pregame. And I gotta say, it might be the most like bland thing I can imagine to eat before a game. So there's nothing like in particular that you eat before a game. You chew gum to, I guess, settle your stomach, but is that about it?
That's about it, really.
Well, yeah. I still remember his name's Garrick, and I'd be like, Garrick, you got your rice? Yep, it's right here. And he pull it out. And we're not talking like a small Tupperware. We're talking like, like those quart-sized Tupperware containers?
Yes, yeah.
Like he made like an entire like rice cooker full of rice and would like eat that. And I'm just like, dude, I don't even know how you're moving right now. But
yeah, that's crazy.
Okay, I don't want you to out anybody, but is there anything funny to you about how certain guys prepare for the game? Is there something that stands out to you about how certain guys go about their preparation? Are there guys that are more superstitious than others?
Yeah, I would think so. There's a couple of guys that that need to be wearing the certain thing or are always listening to music or, have the same playlist that they listen to get them pumped up or whatever it may be. But for sure, there's some guys that are more superstitious than others.
That actually reminds me. So Ben Bywater comes on my radio show every week, and this goes back, I think, 2 weeks ago. He actually said that he's kind of appointed himself as like the practice DJ in a way. Like he's helping with, I guess, the playlist for like the soundtrack. Do you have any input on that yourself? I know you're
No, I don't have any input. I don't really care what's played at practice. So.
Okay. Well, and that brings us to one of our listener questions. They actually, this was sent in. They asked, what is Clark's favorite type of music? You said you're not a huge music listener, but when you do crank up the tunes, what is it?
Yeah, when I do, it's definitely country. Anything though, the old, the new. I'll always be listening to country music. So.
Okay, are we talking like Old Dominion, Kenny Chesney? We going back to Merle Haggard? Like, what are we?
All of it. Yeah.
All right.
Honestly, I don't listen to much else unless my wife's phone is connected to the car. So.
And then what does she listen to? Top 40? What does she listen to?
A little bit of everything. She'll listen to some country sometimes, some pop, rap, whatever. So.
Okay.
Just depends on the day.
Well, you're getting cultured that way, right? Otherwise,
exactly. Yeah.
Okay. Very cool. All right. Last thing before we go here, Clark. When it comes to football, you've been playing for a very long time. What play? And this was also asked. Who or what type of player in the NFL? So I guess there's a certain player that you kind of model your game after, a guard. For example, like there's like Steve Hutchinson, who's an NFL Hall of Famer. Like, is there a player or a certain type of offensive lineman that you model your game after?
Yeah, I've actually been asked this question before, and I don't think there's a certain player that I really model my game after, but we do watch a lot of film, just NFL film, and they're the best of the best, and so just trying to model kind of my first two steps, my hand placement, and everything, just based off of the guys I watch. We watch a lot of 49ers film, and so just watching each position really, and just seeing what works for them and how they do it, and then trying to implement that in my game is really the main thing that I do. So
awesome. Well, Clark, thank you so much for taking the time once again this week to join us. Obviously, we'll be looking forward to seeing you out there against Wyoming. Oh, by the way, when it comes to they're right now, I don't want to keep you too long, but there's one other thing. I had a couple people reach out to me. Jay Drew noted this with Kalani Sitake as well. Your guys' record in day games versus night games right now is shockingly, like, you guys aren't very good in day games of late, but in night games, you're really, really good. Kalani kind of laughed about it. He's like, I had no clue about that. Did you know about the disparity between the two?
No, I had no idea.
Okay, but can you does playing in the day affect you guys differently? Because I know you play a lot of night games. It's just kind of how things have been for BYU. But do you prefer one or the other? Or do you care?
I don't think it really matters. There's a little bit of difference in preparation just because you don't have a whole day to continue to prepare. But I think as long as you get your preparation in, it should be all right. So.
All right. Well, hey, fair enough. I figured I'd throw it at you because Kalani was like, he, and I trust me, I've known Coach long enough that he was kind of stunned when I think it was like 0-4 in your last 4 day games over the past 2 or 3 years versus like just it was crazy. Like not a good record day games, but night games, you guys are lights out. It was kind of funny to look at the disparity between the two. So
yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah, one of those weird things. All right, that'll do it for this edition of the Clark Barrington Show. Clark, thanks as always. We look forward to Saturday night, and we'll catch up with you next week, all right?
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for today's edition of Locked On Cougars. Hope you guys are all doing fantastic out there. Thank you for making us your first listen of the day. Want to encourage you guys now to make it your second listen. Our friends over at the Locked On Big 12 podcast. Josh Neighbors got you covered every single day with everything going on in the Big 12 Conference. Get that free and available wherever you get your podcast. For Clark, I'm Jake. Have a great rest of your day. This has been the Locked On Cougars podcast.